L'arte di arrangiarsi, or the art of getting by, is a distinctive feature of the Italian national identity. It's often idealised by non-Italians as the nonna making fresh pasta on a wooden table in her olive garden, although it also carries the idea of sharp practice or bending the rules. It's the person who helps you today with the pumps at the self-service petrol station in return for a tip, or the squeegee merchants washing your windscreens at the traffic lights. It became most used after the unification of Italy in the 1860s, when heavy taxes and land reform resulted in tremendous poverty, and Italians had to resort to ingenious strategies to get by. With scarce resources and large families to feed, Cucina Porvora, or poor cooking, was a necessity and an art, using local seasonal ingredients, or old ones like days-old bread or overripe tomatoes, to make dishes that were filling and tasty. So what has this got to do with Nutella? Well, Nutella epitomises the old art of getting by, of turning scarcity and hardship into a huge, modern, Italian, global economic success. Janduya chocolate was probably made in the early 1800s in Turin, in northern Italy, when chocolate makers quietly added roasted hazelnuts and almonds to their chocolate to make up for a shortage in cocoa supplies during the Napoleonic Wars. Janduya, by the way, is named after a famous mask of the Turin Carnival. It was only in the early 20th century that the addition of roasted hazelnuts and almonds was expressly declared, as they'd previously been seen as adulterants to bulk up the contents. The history of Nutella began in Turin with Pietro Ferrero, who in 1925 had the idea of producing a simple and cheap dessert for the workers in the prospering factories of Turin. This was a pastone, a cocoa dough which was cut into thin slices and eaten on bread. As cocoa was in short supply after the Second World War, cheaper and locally produced hazelnuts were added to it. The Ferrero company was incorporated in 1946, with ownership passing to Pietro's son Michele, following Pietro's death in 1949. And it's said that the summer of 1949, which was particularly hot and the pastone melted, meant that Michele saw the attraction of spreadable Janduya and started working on adding oils to the chocolate to make them creamy and spreadable at room temperature throughout the year. And so in 1951 the precursor of Nutella was born, the Cremalba, which was later renamed Supercrema. Supercrema production continued until the 1960s, when Italian labelling laws banned the use of the prefix super for foods. Ferrero looked for a non-generic, trademarkable name and came up with Nutella in 1963, a mix of English and Italian. In 1965, Nutella was launched in Germany, with factories opening later in the 1960s in Germany and France. Expansion to the UK and Australia followed in the 1970s and to the US in the 1980s. Although many have copied the idea of chocolate spreads, there is something that makes Nutella taste just that little bit better than its competitors. And in fact, it's so successful that Ferrero makes up around 30% of all demand for hazelnuts. Giovanni Ferrero assumed the leadership of the company after the death of his brother in 2011 and has an estimated net worth of over $37 billion, making him the richest person in Italy and in the world's top 50. His grandfather was the same Pietro Ferrero who founded the company in 1946. So, in addition to representing the art of getting by, Ferrero also epitomises another Italian characteristic, the family-owned company which invests for future generations. Of course, Ferrero is not without criticism. In 2015, the French Environment Minister called for a boycott of Nutella because of the extensive use of palm oil, which she linked to tropical deforestation. She subsequently apologised, and it does appear that Ferrero probably does do more than most companies to source its products responsibly, although its heavy use of palm oil to keep the products spreadable at room temperature probably isn't great for the environment. Ferrero was also dragged into politics by populist firebrand Matteo Salvini, who in 2019 declared that he would no longer eat Nutella after discovering that many of the hazelnuts used to make it came from Turkey rather than Italy. And finally, if you break Nutella down into its constituent parts, it doesn't look that healthy, with its high sugar and palm oil content. I wonder if it tasted better back in the day when it was called Supercrema and ingredients were harder to source. I bet it didn't. I hope you enjoyed this video about the art of getting by and one of Italy's most successful exports. If you'd like to know more, please feel free to like and subscribe, and there'll be another video about Italy along shortly.